We're in Amsterdam at the Okura Hotel, where BIR, the World Recycling Organization, is celebrating its 75th anniversary. It's also the celebration of this magazine, Recycling International, 25 years. And we're going to chat here at Okura with some industry leaders. Okay, we move to India now, and here at the table is Dhawal Shah, a non-ferrous recycler working for Metco Ventures in India, in Mumbai, right? And in
That's
Mumbai
right.
region you're based. Um, Dhawal, my first question would be, there's a lot going on, there's a lot, talks about scrap quality, also in India. There's more, more regulation on that. What's the latest?
Well, at this moment, the government and industry are working together on a document which is called the BIS document, the Bureau of Indian Standard document, which kind of sets quality benchmarks or thresholds in terms of how the Indian secondary industry, what kind of raw materials and what kind of qualities it needs to trade in. I think while this change happens, I think it's a good change. But having said that, I must also emphasize that by over using regulation into it, I think it's going to scuttle growth. I think this document has to reflect reality. It has to be conducive to industries working. And I think by end of the day, just to say that we want the cleanest material, the purest material, is not going to give you the purest output. You have bad systems to follow, you will have a bad output.
Okay.
If you have a good system to follow, you will have a good output. Scrap is good. I think the point is to optimally use that to have more generations and more consumption. So I think document needs to achieve that.
But are you saying that too much regulation, over-regulation, will have an impact on the scrap inflow and India needs the scrap, right, for the
Absolutely.
growing economy?
Absolutely. So if you look at the last 30, 40 years, how India has evolved as a secondary industry, I think there is significant growth that's come about. You are an indispensable source of several industries, automotive, packaging, construction. And I think India has grown, the industry has grown. So the point is that, as I said, while you put regulation, that regulation has to be conducive to the industry, to the growth. It cannot be, and as I said, that we have some examples from our peers in Asia where they went for the highest quality of scrap, but I don't think India is looking at that agenda. I think the point here is that India wants a system that is very functional and it doesn't create an impasse between the trade and the regulatory controls.
Yeah. And what about the volume of scrap demand? I mean, India's economy is growing 6-7% per year now. More and more scrap is needed. Steel makers need more and more ferrous scrap. I mean, there's many industry. Middle class is growing. How do you see that?
So, again, I think if you look at any of the big discussions, whether in the world forums, whether it is the COP27, whether it was the World Summit, I think what has resonated a lot are the discussions on decarbonization, sustainability, circularity. How do we do that? I think scrap is at its core. So while the energy transition is a key to, it's a starting point of everything, but I don't undermine the role of how scraps play an important role in decarbonization and the whole green transition theory. So I think Europe is coming up with a regulation called CBAM, which will be where it will have aluminium and steel in its first set of products. I think I see that as an advantage for India, that today if you had products which are optimally using scrap, that has a very lesser carbon footprint, I think they will have a better acceptance in Europe. So I think by end of the day, more scrap, there are more benefits socially, environmentally, economically. We need to capitalize on that and at the same time follow what the world is doing. So, but as I said, it all can be done with a very practical policy, not just in theory. It has to be a very super tight, super kind of regulated policy. I think it has to be conducive to business.
And domestic scrap generation in India is growing too, but the country, the industry, the economy very much depend for a long time on import of scrap, right? Is that How do you see that?
So I think we are a low base consumption. I think if I just had to give you one basic example, like we've got say 25 cars to 1,000 families or 1,000 people. If you look at US, it's probably about 800, 850. Perhaps BRIC countries averaging at about 300, 350. So as this consumption story unfolds, as India goes bigger, better in terms of its consumption, there will be more scrap. But at this point in time, to this surplus that we are looking at, we are having a time gap of about 15, 20 years. So in the interim period, there will be scrap requirement. The government is definitely doing its best in terms of making sure that the domestic supplies kind of, reach out to the smelters or the needs of the people. We have the vehicle scrappage policy, and I mean, I started my career about 20 years back, and I never thought that we will have a vehicle scrappage policy coming in India, but that's a reality today, that if your vehicle is 15 years old and beyond, it will make more commercial sense for you to send it to a shredder and have that raw material come back to the smelters. So these are the initiatives what India is embarking on. But as I said, that before we realize that the domestic growth or domestic availability is sufficient enough, we will have to rely on import. It's not that we enjoy this. I think the balances have to be there. But by end of the day today, if you ask me, I think whether it is import or domestic, India is a scrap deficient country and it needs to look at how it's going to procure its resource materials.
Yeah. One last question. We're sitting here, the magazine Recycling International celebrating 25 years. How do you look at the magazine?
Well, I've been following your magazine for like last 8-10 years. I think the content that you cover, the reporting, the whole storytelling is so impactful, so powerful, and so relevant to our industry. And as I said, that I perhaps have made better decisions on my businesses, reading those articles, reading some of the stuff that you cover. So I think it's a very impactful tool, a medium, and I must congratulate you and your team. You guys have done a fantastic job, and I would say please continue with it. And as I said, I enjoy reading it, and I want to have more of it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dhawal.